So, thank you for joining us. This episode of Scope is brought to you by American Photographic Artists and its Chicago chapter. I'll share a little bit of information about APA before we go ahead and welcome the wonderful and amazing Sean. APA is a not-for-profit organization for photographers who are primarily in the advertising, editorial, and commercial sectors. APA's mission is to help photographers succeed through the establishment of community, education, and advocacy. And I have the pleasure of being the chair of APA's Diversity Committee, which hosts Scope. And this series on diversity is designed to help us understand and consider the challenges of our peers and find solutions for a better working environment. To learn more about Scope, about the Diversity Committee, and to become a member, please visit apanational.org for more information. And so tonight, I am so excited to welcome Séan Alonzo Paris to talk about his work from a past exhibit entitled The Space Between. So let's move this over so I could read Séan's amazing bio. So Séan's photographic education began in his childhood through the Art Institute of Boston, studies abroad in Italy, and closer to home at Maine media workshops. He established his career in commercial, fine art, and editorial photography in Maine, Boston, and New York. And Séan works with a broad range of editorial, educational, and corporate clients, including Mother Jones, LL Bean, JP Morgan Chase, and Pacific Airlines, to name just a few. His professional practice includes teaching at Maine media workshops and collaborative, community-driven projects with nonprofit organizations. He has received multiple grants and awards from the Maine Arts Commission, a formal proclamation from the 121st Maine legislature in recognition of his work, and was named by Maine Magazine as one of the 60 most collectible artists in Maine. So Séan's work is marked by a fine art sensibility and an emphasis on environmental portraits. His creative process draws from a wide range of photographic traditions and methods and is driven by an authentic connection to his subjects and clients. He's genuinely curious about people's lives and the experiences that shape their world, and thus the space between. Welcome, Séan.
Well, thank you for having me, Martine. This is wonderful. I love these these gatherings. I feel like whenever we do these kind of things, it's like the idea is to extend community. And that's a big part of why I do what I do. It's the idea of community and the idea of connecting people together and like-minded, not like-minded, and just growing our knowledge and and sharing recipes. No, I'm just kidding, but that's also an important part.
Recipes are good too.
That's a big part of it. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump in and show you. What I'm going to show you today is I'm going to show you like the beginning. I'm going to skip over a bunch of stuff and go right into the space between. And then we can discuss there. And if we have enough time, I can go through some other things, but we're going to do that. Let me share my screen really quickly. And let's see here. Okay. Where is here it is right here. Okay. All right. Can everyone see that? Or thumbs up, wave, or whatever? Okay. This is the space between. So I'm going to start off. Okay. So I got a camera from my grandmother when I was 7, and I still own this. I put this up on put lights and stuff and lit this myself as an adult because it was one of my most prized possessions. But the thing was, my parents got divorced, so so me and my mom, we lived in Cambridge. My dad moved back to Massachusetts. He moved back to Washington, D.C. So I'd have to travel back and forth. And this was my portal to connection, and most of my family are from DC. So I had the opportunity to take photographs and come back and put these photographs up on my wall. And I didn't realize this, but at the same time, I was pagination and putting them together and trying to figure out like, oh, this, cousin Tony goes with cousin Kim, and and I was putting these things together and making this world of mine so that I stayed connected. And that was like my first introduction to photography and that whole thing. This is me a little bit older. My K1000. I was pretty serious about photography. And after this, I even built a dark room in my room at the age of 13 until my mother came home and she's like, "You're going to kill us all." So that had to go away. But I was pretty serious about it. My first payday, I guess, as a photographer, my first accolades that I received was I won this James Vanderzee Award, which is a Black Heritage James Vanderzee, and it was the first photographer that Black photographer that I met that was actually he made a living with photography. Before that, I never even really thought about it, but yeah, that was so that propelled me to think about this as something that I could do. Yeah, this is my dad and Lenny. Okay, and so that's kind of the beginnings. This is my mom. That's kind of the beginnings of where I am. And like fast forward, let's go. Sorry about like all these things. Fast forward. Da, 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 da. Okay.
As you're going forward, Sean, I wanted
Yes.
to, in some of the research I was doing for this
Right.
time together, I read that you received your first award. That first award you talked about, was that when you were just a teenager? Was that the one?
Yes, that was when I was just a teenager, and I won honorable mention the year after that too. Ta-da! Before, yeah, and yeah, that was yeah. So there was something there, so I just let it run, and I let it run its course, and here I am today. I mean, like like I think some days, there are times when I was in the dark room and I just broke down crying because like I can't believe that I'm still doing this because I love it so much. And like I've been fortunate enough to continuously do this and make a living and travel, meet amazing people, meeting all over the country, everywhere. And it's been like, it's just amazing. Okay, but anyways, let's the space between was a project. I was awarded an artist residency at this place called Indigo Arts Alliance, which is based in Portland, and it's an artist residency for Black and Brown people. And so I was one of their inaugural, the first year that they were giving out residencies. And so I went into this thing. I had 2 months, and I just got off a bunch of stuff. So this is right before COVID, by the way. And so I went there and had all these grandiose ideas of what I was going to do. And I was like, okay, I'm going to continue a project that I'd already started in Portland, which was called Voices in Our Midst. And I was like, that sounds great, And when I got there, I started to read, and I'm like, wow, and then I kept going with reading, and it was Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, and it really hit me in a different way from when I was, in my early 20s. It was speaking to me in this way that made me rethink on how and what I was doing and how I was portraying people in a way where I started researching and pushing and looking at other ways to capture Black and Brown people. You know what I mean? And mixed in with a little bit of Chicago's finest, James Marshall.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and how he was so boldly painting Black people on the canvas. So I took hold of that. These street photographs are basically to display community. right here, and just grab the sense of pride and love and understanding and wonder, and this whole project happened within less than a mile radius.
So do you just, in terms of executing the project, so once you have the idea in mind, do you just go for a walk? Do you reach out to specific folks? How do you do it?
With this project, it because it was because I had already started. The Voices in Our Mist was the beginning of the space between, and Voices in Our Mist happened by accident. Like, I was working on another project that wasn't going well, and then and I started photographing in this neighborhood, which is this is Fox Field, or the East Bay side, or Kennedy Park in Portland. And basically, it's like this area, and it's public housing, or low income housing, and it's an area of low income housing. And all around the edges of this place is microbreweries, fancy coffee shops. There's even a Middle Eastern restaurant that the people in Kennedy Park can't afford because it's too much. So gentrification is surrounding this area. And this is like a record of these people's existence, their lives, how they existed, because in 10 years from now, I don't know if this place is going to be there. I don't know if these people are going to be living in this area. They're going to, like, they'll probably be living in the outskirts or beyond, in other places of Portland, or in other cities surrounding it. So this was kind of like a witness. This is kind of like evidence that of their lives, and honoring and preserving their existence. So they're not invisible. They're human beings. Yeah. So this is I'm my sister's keeper, which is, yeah. So this is the people, the whole thing, and this is a perfect example of skin tone, like understanding what that is, understanding like the black skin, and capturing it and all of its richness. One thing about the black skin in the sun, it's just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, like you can't replicate the skin and the depth almost any other way, unless you have an HMI, like like a 2K or whatever, or you can use an LED. But still, I feel like sometimes LED lights aren't quite the same quality. You know what I mean? Maybe with some of the ones now that have Fresnels or whatever, but the quality of light from the sun is just you can't surpass. I mean, it's just beautiful. No scrim, no nothing. Just like
Wow.
hard light.
And so around what time of the day would that be?
This would be more like, this was probably taken in the summertime in August. So this was probably at like 6 o'clock, where the sun is just, where the shadows are getting longer, or they're long, and they have and it's like the warmest part of the light. You know what I mean? The warmest part when it's coming down, because it's cutting through at a different angle. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah. So all my subjects, I build. Obviously, you can see that they're very aware that I'm there, and I make them know that this is what I'm doing, and I explain to them what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll grab it and walk up and show them the image, and then have a conversation, because the moment's happening and I see it and I have to capture it, and then I go up. But now now people know who I am. They see me. They've gone to see the work in different places and stuff. So it's a little different in some ways. That in some ways that could be a hindrance, and in other ways it can make it a lot easier. You know what I mean? Because before, they didn't pose. They just were, you know what I mean? They were just honest, like, and And now they're like, oh, they want to get their photograph taken, so which is different. Yeah, this is like one of my favorite sleeper images. Sometimes you have these images that come about that you're like, oh yeah, you pass over it and you come back to it and you're like, oh yes, that's it. Yeah. So yeah, this was actually from Voices in Our Midst. This was, you know, a lot of fun just hanging out. That's Clay, you know. We were talking earlier about another photographer who I assisted, like my first assistant job. And if anyone does look up John Hewitt's basketball shots, and you'll see a heavy influence on him, and and heavy influence on me from him. You know, this is years later. Yeah.
As you're taking these images, do you, and I know that part of it was for the first project that you did,
Right.
and then at what point did you decide to just continue the project for your residency?
Well, right at first, I mean, that was the idea of me that was the idea that I had going into the residency. And then, so I had these images, and that right now they're all mixed together. So there's some stuff that I took, like they're different times. They're not in chronological order. And how I didn't put them there. I kind of put them in this sequence on images that kind of talk to each other, versus like images like from this is from this project, this is from that project. All the shots from basketball was from the first part of the project. So I had a base that I wanted to build from, and then but I got derailed and thinking differently. So yeah, so I will
The skin on these, though, oh my goodness,
yeah.
it's
and
just
and
so beautiful.
Yeah. And the idea, I mean, like, like if you understand, I mean, like, so I had a formal education in art school, and we had like color, and there was a chart, I remember, a color chart, and there is, I forget what it's called, but it's the Kodak skin chart, and it has different skin tones, but my skin tone was not on there at all. But I had to play by those rules because that's what I was being taught. And it took me years to understand that that was not uh, that did not work with what I wanted to do. Like those rules did not work. So I had to do a little bit more research and dig deeper to figure out how I wanted to interpret skin. But it's not as, I mean, yeah, you can take a photograph like, ooh, that the skin tone is perfect by accident. You know what I mean? Like, and but consistently do it is something different, to understand what that is and how that interpret. And I counted like the humanity of the black skin, and kind of that's kind of what I that's kind of what I want to do, to show that skin, to that gives that joy, that richness, that other thing, you know yeah. Yeah. And so this project happened. COVID was just starting, so a lot of things were put on hold. So I started to just walk around the neighborhood and start taking photographs. I pushed myself into do something else, urban landscapes, which was a lot of fun. And at the same time, these became respites in my show to either separate or to try to change the direction of
Mhm.
what I was trying to say in a whole body of work. So these pieces right here, you know. and it was really a lot of fun. So with all of these photographs, I was listening to Charles Mingus, and I had just got um, this new recording of Charles Mingus at it was Detroit Strand. It came out. It's like a 5 album thing, but it's an absolutely gorgeous set of music. And the one song that really hits is Dizzy's is Dizzy's Profile, and that's a song I listen over and over again. I hear a song and I listen to it and dissect it as if I was dissecting a photograph. I just like to hear and everything and focus on the nuances and all that stuff. You know.
So in doing that and listening to these songs as you're working, do you find that in some ways it helps you develop your own nuance as
Yes.
you are creating?
Right. Well, I think as an artist, I think you need to you you have to figure out a way to read. And when I say read, I mean like you need to dissect other people's language and figure out what they're trying to say in a very deep way. And that can be music, that could be poetry, that could be, you know what I mean, short stories, paintings, photography, or whatever. But you have to understand, you have to figure out a way to dissect things so that when you go back to your work, you can create your own language. So you have a structure so that you can do that. I'm sure you can do it in other ways. That's just my process. That's kind of where I am. With music, the beautiful thing about music is every time you listen to it, if you listen to it passively, if you listen to it intensely, if you listen to it, there's all these other nuances and things that come out. And it can, one piece can mean multiple things. It can mean like very upbeat and, and then it could be like sad and, and it just has it can provoke different feelings. And I think if you try to, when you listen to music intensely, well, for me, when I listen to music intensely, I start picking those things up, and it creates a rhythm. Every place has a rhythm, and you follow and you go through that rhythm. And when you hit something, you want to stay with that rhythm so that it's continued. Like when you're in the dark room and you have a metronome. You listen to the metronome so that you can burn and dodge the same, so you can do the same print over and over and over again. And that's kind of that's part of the idea. But if you put a little rhythm and bass and trumpets and those kind of things, it's a totally different thing.
I feel like what you've just shared, it could be its own scope. It could be its own webinar in terms of untangling that, because I think in some ways I'm really obsessed with the art of creating and how we go about having an idea and then creating something and having a tangible product. I don't want to say product, but of tangible something at the end.
Right.
And so I think, yeah, that could be its own thing.
Yes.
But but of course, I'm not going to get into that now. In terms of time, we only have so much time together.
Right. But that is a very important part, the creativity, the idea of creativity, how you fall into it. And so here we have the beginning of the space between. And this was right after I finished Invisible Man. And so I started to create these portraits. And the idea behind these portraits, I needed them to be the richest, the skin tone. I needed the subject to be strong and powerful and seen and undeniable, and you know what I mean. And so when you looked at them, I wanted you to stop and you had to give them the respect that was due. And that's kind of how I approached these images. Like I am not invisible.
Can you tell me if you had it in mind to do the project in color or to switch at one point or another, or did you always want to do it in black and white?
I always wanted to do it. Basically, I mean, like, because I do both. I do like commercial work. Most of all of my commercial work is always in color. It's very rare that it's black and white. Now and again, sometimes, but very rare. These obviously were shot digitally, so they started as color images, and I do have them as color images on my website. And that when I add them to the color, they take on a different present. You know, they take on a different meaning. You know what I mean? They're with black and white. I always feel like it strips away all that. You know, you're just working with tones, and it's easier to get to the point. Not on all things, but on the way that I approach photography. I think it's easier to get to, like, I'm trying to talk about black skin and being not invisible. And I think color photography, like for instance, like the background is one tone, or her shirt's another tone, her skin tone's another tone, her hair's another tone, her eyes is another tone, her lips another. And I think that now it's just tones, and it just makes it easier to resonate on the message. You get to the message of what I'm trying to do. I mean, it's a beautiful image color, and I do have this image in color on my website. You know.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of what it, you know, and so with this project, so like, granted, there's COVID going on, so but we at this particular time, we really didn't understand it. So people were coming in, and you know what I mean, I was like, people were coming in to have their photographs taken, and I would do probably one a day, you know what I mean, and it, you know, and depending on the people's schedules. And so yeah, so I would come in, I would talk for like 30 minutes, explain what I was doing, and try to build up this relationship. Now, some people I did know who came through, but there were a lot of people, most of the people I didn't know. And so basically, you know, and that's kind of what, you know, what how I went about, you know. And if you can see, there's I guess, you know, there's a little bit of my one of my favorite photographers was Irving Penn, and there's a little bit of him in some of these images. But yeah, but yeah, this was a lot of fun. This was like, so yeah, and the hands were extremely important with this project.
So you really wanted people to incorporate their hands.
Yes, I did. Not and there's two images that the hands did not fall into play. And the reason being is because it wasn't, I mean, the image that I saw didn't have hands. You know what I mean? I just saw that it did not have hands. Mm. Right. Mm-hmm.
And how did you decide on such shallow depth of field?
This was actually shot with a perspective control lens. It was so it was a PC lens, which is, so it's like, if you think about like a 4x5 camera with a bellows. So I was doing kind of selective focus with this lens. So I would change the focus on, and I would want it to hit certain areas, like, you know, so I would just change the perspective so it wasn't flat. It cut through at a different way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. This is one of my favorite images, and this reminds me of we just said his name, the painter from Chicago, or he lives in Chicago. I don't know.
Marshall.
Yeah, and if there's an image that he has, that, or there's a painting that he's painted. This doesn't look like his painting, but it does. It has a little bit of a little bit, but not, you know. But I just really love this image. I think it's so strong, just his look. And if you can see, I don't know, but he has a toothpick in his mouth.
He has a toothpick in his mouth. Oh, I can't see that, but I do see the pick in his hair.
Picking his
And
hair.
then the
Yeah.
Anka. But this is amazing because I think if anything, I mean, everything that we've been seeing is just really amazing. But talk about being seen and talking about commanding presence, right? So
Right.
he, he he's amazing. So was he like this as you went through the session with him, or was this just one of um, those moments that you managed to catch?
Like because I'm so old school, like I still approach it like as if I'm working with a 4x5 camera, or an 8x10 camera. So it's a conversation. It's like I'm sitting there having a conversation with each viewer, and we're talking, and I explain to them my process on how I'm going about this. I'm like, I'm going to talk, blah blah blah. We're going to have a conversation, and there'll be moments when I ask you just to stop and hold, because that's what you have to do when you're working, because it's a slower process with 4x5. And so that's kind of where we did. So he was listening to me. I was talking. I'm like, hold, and then I'd shoot. It's digital, so you really don't have to. You could shoot a million, but that was just kind of the process that I went about here. So I slowed the digital process down purposely to a crawl, so that I can have these moments, so that I can, and plus what I was trying to capture, I thought that it just made more sense. It wasn't like this, um, fast-paced thing happening, and they're portraits. So, and the idea and like the care and to make them precious, and those kind of things just kind of was really important. So I took my time, you know. Yeah. All right. How are we doing? We're doing good.
We're doing good. It looks like
Okay.
we have some questions that have come in, but I'll let you just keep going.
Okay.
I would say we have about, we'll give you 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. The there's two ways I can go. I can talk to you about the next images below this are some experiments that I've done that I've been playing around with. They're not complete ideas, but it's I'm thinking through things on the next image. And then the images after that are more like, me and my wife have an organization or a business, what we call Hinge Collaborative, and it works with artists. And these are, and it's just like a fun little, it has, some of our tenants, some of the things that we work by, and quotes from other, either writers, artists, and those kind of things. So I'll go through
Sure,
those because that'll be short. That'll be easy.
that
So
would be
these are some,
great.
yeah, these are some ideas, that these are just experiments, which are always fun to see art and work in process. Yeah. So this is a photograph that I took, and this is silk screened. Another world is possible on it, and this is just kind of an idea, you know. And this is my daughter. This is a photograph that I took of her, and I printed it out. And I was trying to figure out ways to incorporate silkscreen over the photograph. I like the idea of process. So I mean, you could do this in Photoshop very easily, but I like the idea of process. And there are other things that happen when you work this way that are unexpected. This was just ink on a roller and making just a plate, on a photocopy, or you know, yeah. So these are like, some things like, that I think that they're just important things that to share. Um, yeah, I can't see the whole thing because I have, oh, there we go, right there. So
Oh, you have a quote from Elizabeth Catlett, who is a
yeah,
hero of mine.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is very, very important stuff, and I think that, yeah. So I'll give a few minutes to read through. Yeah, is that it? Uh-oh. Okay, whoops. Sorry. Yeah, yeah. Can you read the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay, good.
We believe that art and artists are vital for envisioning a better world and building the communities we want to live in. And then
Oh,
another favorite, Roy de Carava, the
Roy de
artist
Caro.
is a kind of a seer, and by nature he is optimistic because he believes in the future.
Exactly. Yeah, I wasn't asking you to read it. I was like, because on my screen, like our bubbles on the side are I can't see the whole thing.
You can't see it, I see, but it's
Right.
I mean, you both artists, Roy de Carava has had an amazing influence in my life. He's what um convinced me. He's the first person, the first Black photographer I discovered, honestly, and
Right.
who very much influenced. Somebody came with flowers for me, unprompted.
Awesome.
My son. Um, but
Awesome.
he, Roy de
Beautiful
Carava,
man.
continues to be a huge
Yeah.
influence in my life. Thank you for sharing his ethos.
Yes. Yes, and mine too. Yes. Roy de Carava. I have as many books as I possibly can. I have right up there. I have a book of Roy de Carava right there. The Sweet Flypaper of Life. Did
Oh,
you?
I don't have that one. I did go
Yeah.
see his exhibit. There was an exhibit of his in LA
Right.
a few years ago. And that was
Right. Right.
amazing.
Yeah, I missed his exhibit because I had to
Yeah,
do
it was
some
the
other stuff in
Underground
New York.
Museum, I think.
But I've seen he had a show. I don't know how many, a long time ago. He had a show and he just had photographs with Billie Holiday, never seen before, and that was
Wow.
amazing. And it didn't. It never. I don't think it's a book or anything. I just saw the show, and I have a, like like an invite for the show. That's it. But it was just amazing. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. So Hinge is an or is we try to work with other artists like-minded and work through social justice issues and and just collaborate and come up and the way that we like to work is each person is equal. It's like, if you know what I mean, everyone has a say. There's no one above anyone else, and we just try to come together as creatives um, to either create a question to push out into the world or to talk to an issue in the world, and truly try to create a true collaboratory environment, where each person feeds off of each other, and we try to raise everyone um, up, try to hold everyone up. Hmm. Yeah, doing pretty good. So we have a few more. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If we could go back to the last one, because I just wrote down a question that I have for you. And
Okay.
in thinking about not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. Um,
Right.
and I was writing down a question, which is all in thinking about ideas. And you seem you are a man who's done so many things um, in his professional life, including published books and had lectures, been featured in, I read the LL Bean series in Yankee Magazine, just to name a few. Um, and usually you're lauded for these amazing ideas that you have and that you've executed. But can you talk a little bit about how do you choose that good idea? And how do you choose that good idea? And when is an idea worth really executing? Um,
Um, that is a good question. um, uh, sometimes it just happens where you it's like a dog in a bone. You pick it up and you just can't. You just have to execute it. And other times it's just an idea that kind of happens and it marinates over time and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and it gets to like the dog with the bone. But choosing the I mean, because there's a lot of ideas. It seems like, you know, one thing might lead to the other, like all of a sudden it could be like you're reading the paper and then like the idea that you had becomes relevant. You know, and it resonates with you and it has this power. You know, other than when it was just an idea. Now the idea, because it's out in the world or it's connected to some other story or something else that's happening in the world, it's like, oh my god, I got to do this now, you know, because this is, you know what I mean. So it just kind of happens. I mean, like, you know, talking about, you know, the idea, you know, the Voices in Our Mist happened by accident. I just started shooting and then I saw I had these images, and then I started doing research about the area, and then the area of the place started. It's like, hey, oh my god, in 10 years this place might not even be here. And you know, so it just, you know, so that kind of grew. And then, like, you know, the space between happened, you know, because, you know, I was working on this project and I'm like, oh, let me pause, stop and read. And I'm like, oh, and then I came out on the other side. Now this thing kind of just rolled. So I think that you just, like anything, you have to be curious and mindful. Like I'm working on another project right now that I'm going to start in June, hopefully, if work doesn't get in the way, but I'm going to start in June. And it's like completely different from anything else I've ever done. It's like, look, because most of my projects look out into the world, and this is going to look, I'm going to turn the lens back onto me, not like self-portraits or anything, but it's going to be related directly to my story, my history, my people, you know what I mean, my family kind of thing, which is really interesting. So, you know, and that, you know, because, you know, it's like a full circle, like where it started kind of thing, you know.
Okay, I have a follow-up to that.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
you are just in researching you and in researching the work that you've done, you know, you're known to have this great ability of creating photos that are, this is an official quote, photos of great beauty and power. And you also are very well known to keep photography personal. There's something that you do, and obviously we've seen that through the work that you've shown us, in which there's this great connection that happens. And then you're able to create these projects and have it be just amazing. But not only that, but you are well versed with getting quite a bit of press for the work that you do. And not every photographer, not all photographers know how to do the work and then also keep finding ways to introduce the work to a broader audience. Are there any tips or anything that you could share with us that could help folks understand how to go about the process of sharing their work with a more broad audience?
Let me tell you.
Meaning getting a lot of press for it. I was being too subtle. I mean press,
Right.
lots and lots of press.
Well, I've been incredibly lucky. I've never asked for a show ever. Like I've always been invited. Like, hey, would you like to show at my gallery? Or you're invited, or someone, you know, like a museum or something, like, hey, you know, would you like to either, sometime I've been commissioned by 2 different museums to create a body of work for, you know, that hung in their thing. And I'm not great at this, like at marketing as far as my art. It just kind of happens. I don't know, like, you know, maybe it's the people around me who kind of make that that effort, you know, people who believe in me. And so like that, I wish I had that proper. I think another thing is, I think that you have to have something that speaks to people where you make them curious. It has I just did a show that just came down a couple of weeks ago that was light informs my reality. And I think that in the titles, sometimes what happens is it creates this curious buzz, like, what does that mean? Or, like, light informs my reality. Oh, it's a photo show. I get it, and people kind of go about it. But I really don't, yeah, I'm
I
really
want to say something because Sean, I had the pleasure of meeting you in person
yeah,
last year, last fall,
last year, yeah, yeah.
and you were Mr. Wonderful. Everyone who was there at this portfolio review we both attended was talking about you, and you were going to every single table. I think you're very affable and you're easy to chat with. And you
Right.
were chatting with everyone. You didn't have like you didn't no one was too good for you to
Hmm.
or to you just chatted with everyone. So I think that might have something to do with the fact that you just great at relationships.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So I'll let you go ahead and go through these and then we could open up to questions that folks may have.
Okay. I think we're almost done. Yeah. Well, always remember we're all human. You know what I mean?
That's true.
We all come, we all come from the same place. I don't, I don't buy into like this person's done this, so therefore that they, I mean, I respect my elders, and I give as much information or I share as much as I can to anyone younger than me. And I think that's important. I guess the best way to say it is just treat people human. You know what I mean? And that's the best thing to do. And understand, like, by if you say, okay, we're human, we have flaws, everybody, you know, some people have great talents and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, how can you do that? You know what I mean? Which is great. But, at the same time, at the end of the day, we're all human.
Hmm.
And we all can learn and share, great recipes, you know. Oh,
Great
that
recipe.
is it. That
That
that is the last, that's the last one. Compassion. That's it, you
compassion.
know. Mm-hmm. Which is a great way to end. Compassion, which is one of the most important things that we must have, and I think that that's one of the most important things, especially as a person who photographs people. I think that you have to have the active listening skill and compassion, and you go into the space like I want to be enlightened by this person, and I think that transforms the space that you're in, so that you're setting yourself up to receive goodness and joy,
Mm.
um, which is so one of the best parts of what I do is the conversations that I have with the individuals, in those portrait settings. And that's my gift. That's my thing that I take away. And those conversations, sometimes I might say a little tidbit, but I keep those to myself. Those are mine. You know what I mean? But the photograph is for everyone, you know,
Mm.
and that's
Well, this
so.
is a really great segue into a question that Steve Brooks had, which is how would you describe your directing style for these portraits? And everyone, we are officially open for questions. If you have questions, please go ahead and add it to the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. So go ahead and open that up, and then you could type your questions in, and we'll get to it. So the question I'll repeat for you, Sean, is how would you describe your directing style for these portraits?
I treat everyone human. I'm just kidding. Well, I like as we know, as we work, each person's different. Some people need more humor. Some people need more some people need more hand holding. It really runs, but it runs the gamut of just like how, I think, as a portrait photographer, I think your best gift or your superpower has to be how to read people, like what's going on when you're in that room, in that setting. Um, and so I kind of let that person um, into the I let my sitter into the process. I explain to them what's going on, and I also invite them to, if they have anything that they can offer in this process. So I open it up, in the hopes of um, trying to create this space where creativity can happen. Each one of us can spark off each other. You know, that doesn't work the same in the commercial realm because that takes too long to do. Um, but but also in the commercial realm where you're working with real people, or you're working with like talent. You know what I mean? Um, there's real people take a little bit longer than talent, but at the same time, you still have to put them in a place where you're capturing something that says what you're trying to do. That talks to your client's point of view, or you know what I mean. Um, so I just have to speed up the process. It's less of that like, hey, how's it going, blah blah blah. It's like more like, hey, yeah, this is cool, right? Boom boom, fist bump, and and it's treating them human, like this is no big deal, blah blah blah. So it's basically, I guess, to make people feel comfortable, to let them, same thing, make the people feel comfortable, let them into the fold, let them know that they're part of this process, let them know that I respect them. And I am going to do everything in my power possible to make sure that when we're done with this process, you're going to look the best you possibly can. I don't know if that kind of, talks.
I think that
You're on
was
mute.
amazing.
Yeah.
That was really amazing. As you talked, I thought, oh boy, how simple does that sound? But then in the simplicity is complexity. Is
Hmm.
that? I hope I said it correctly.
You did. Yeah.
Because it's so simple, but yet it's hard to do.
Mhm.
But when it's done right, you get you get great results. So Juliet has a question. She says, "You seem very much focused on the subject. Do you search for clean backgrounds? Do you ever fuss with sets?"
All the time. Okay. So in the street realm, you like you, you're left with what's there. I mean, you know what I mean? Or unless you like, I'm not like saying, okay, take this group of people and put them here because the light's better and the background's better. You just kind of react, and it's like one of those things where it's like falling into the photograph. Like when you're like following a rhythm, like back to the music again, following a rhythm of what's going on, and you're finding where those things kind of fall into place, and you're lining it up. And this is primarily for street photography I'm talking about, and it can work in multiple different ways. But you just kind of you just fall into the shot. You move with the energy that's around, or you move with the rhythm that's around you. You know what I mean? If that makes sense to people. Like when you see someone walking, like if you're in a city, like, each city has a different rhythm. Like people, like Chicago, for instance, it has a completely different rhythm. It's just like, it's got half LA, half New York mixed right down the middle. It's like this weird thing that happens. But I'm sure like someone from the East Coast and some from the West Coast, that we both see it differently. You know what I mean? And so you just have to find that rhythm that works with you, in that settings. But yes, I do, at times I do mess around with the backgrounds and stuff, and I do like a cleaner background, or if there was like lines or some or play around with lines or structures and those kind of things. And as a photographer, you can play around with those from moving up, downs, left, right, like sideways, so you just find those proper things that fit into your language. Like, I think when you understand your language, it's easier for you to fall into those spaces. You're not searching for it as much. Like, you can go into an area and play in a smaller area versus um, trying to like start up here and move all around, and you know what I mean. You're like, okay, there, I'm here. This is where my view. This is my point of view. This is what I say. This is how I say it. You know. So yeah. Yeah, I think each photographer is different to figure out what that is, as far as like how and what the background looks, but yeah, I like a
Perfect.
cleaner background, or I like a structure that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. Like you look at this photograph here, like that thing
Yeah.
behind her, it's like very it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense.
But it draws you
Um,
in as well, and
yeah,
it keeps you
right.
intrigued.
It
So we
does.
have one last question for you, which is from Linda. Linda asks, if someone is not giving you what you want, what do you do? What do you say to them?
I was just like me and my wife have this saying, but this isn't it. This is just funny. It's just like you got to Bernie Mac them.
Bernie Mac?
Bernie Mac. Yeah, I
Okay,
don't know
so
Bernie
tell us
Mac.
a
You know
little
the
bit. I think we
comedian?
just, yes, we have a few more minutes left. So go ahead and
Okay,
tell us that story.
so so basically, if someone's not someone's I mean it's difficult, it's tough, because when someone's not giving you what you want, it's really hard. Sometimes I think you can push too hard, and sometimes if you just kind of step away and walk away and say, okay. Can I say one story? Can I say one story?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's this I was photographing in the what was it, the Boston Conservatory. I was photographing this classical guitarist named Elliot Fisk, and he's semi, he's made records and stuff like that. And we're sitting there, and behind us was a piano tuner. Now you would think like, wow, this is great. You see the piano tuner behind it. He's like, but here's the thing: with the piano tuner, it doesn't sound like music. It's like, to a musician, it sounds awful, and to me, it sounded awful. And so Elliot was really being difficult, but it was because he was annoyed by the sound behind him. And so he started barking orders at me, like, oh, well, this works best for me in the last photograph. And this works best for me. And, it was annoying me. And I was just like, Elliot, he's like, what? If you were on stage and I told you how to play that guitar, would you listen to my advice? I don't play guitar. And he's like, no. And I'm like, thank you. And he just kind of went on about it. I just kind of like pulled his coat to let him know, like, hey. And then later on, I was just like, okay, I asked him one question. I said, if there was any other music than classical music, what would it be? And he responded, oh, I'd love to play Spanish guitar. And you saw his face light up. And there's this photograph that I shot, and I love the image. I don't use it anymore, but he just stood up, went to the corner, and took the guitar and put one leg up to hold the guitar, and he just played. And it was the most beautiful thing. But that was so, like, he just fell into place. So he wasn't giving me what I wanted, but I asked him a question. He was being fairly difficult, and I checked him in a way where, in a respectful way. And then I asked him a question it was an uplifting question to him. He's like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. So yeah, and that was the photograph. I took the photograph that they used, and this was for Boston Magazine years ago. The photograph that they used is when he was playing, like if he was playing Spanish music. It was
Mm.
nothing like when he was playing like a classical guitarist.
Mm.
Ta-da.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you so much for that story. And thank you so much for joining us. This was amazing to
Thank
be
you.
able to um, see you, meet you, um,
Ta-da.
to
Meet
know we
you.
grew up in the same town.
That's
Um,
ta-da. Yep.
Ta-da, we had so many different things in common. Uh, I'm so
Great.
pleased that you were able to come on to share your work with us and to wow us with the stories that you shared, and as well as to inspire us. I know I'm inspired. I've had a personal project that I've had in mind for a long time, and I've just been procrastinating. And I'm really
Go do
glad
it.
that this helped me. You gave me that push that I needed. So thank you so much for joining us.
Right. Anytime. Anytime. You call me up for inspiration anytime. I'm there for you.
I now have your number, so be careful.
That's right. Anytime. Well, within reason, like, if you feel like calling me at 10 o'clock at night, just realize that there is a time difference.
I know. Yeah, there is a time difference. Thank you so much. Thank you,
You're welcome.
everyone, for joining us. We loved
Thank
having you. We are working on more scopes to share with you. So please keep an eye out so that you can hear more information. And we'll see you next time around. Thank you.
You're welcome. One last thing.
Oh, sure.
Let me give you information to Kamonji. Do you know those guys in New York City?
I don't. No.
They're one of the oldest Black or photography societies, and they're still running in New York City. And
Really?
I'm friends with them. Yes, and I can get you in touch with them. They would probably love to do something with you.
Well, please let me know. That would be a lot of fun.
I'll send you their information. I'll send you one guy's information, then it can branch out from there.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Sean. Bye, everyone.
Thank
we'll
you
see you next time around. Bye.
Everybody have a good night.